Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of MSP Unplugged. I'm your host, Rick Smith. This is the place to learn tips, tricks, and strategies that help you run and grow your IT service business. Whether you're a one-person shop or a bigger house leading a team for the journey, this is the place for you. Let me introduce you to my co-host, the man from Chicago itself in the frozen tundra, from ProdigyTeks, Mr. Paco Lebron. How are you today, sir?
It's cold. Better than good, better than most, as I like to say. Yeah, it's cold is the best way for me to say that. It was negative. No, it was 0 degrees on Tuesday, which felt like negative 14. Now we're actually a little bit warmer. We're good now for today. We're at a 12 degrees and it feels like 18 with the sun. So that's
Wow.
where
So that means you can take off your coat, huh?
I can take out my coat, and then when it gets to around 40, maybe 50, that's when you bring out the skirt steak and you start to grill it outside.
I just remember, for those of you who listen, last week's episode, he was gloating. It was 41 degrees, and he thought he was he thought he was in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. But you know, it's cold when you ask someone how you doing. The first thing they tell you is it's cold outside.
It's cold.
Yeah, it's been cold here too. We've been in the teens, and the wind chill brings it down some. So it's been biting cold, and I tell you, I love the winter for certain things. It can be pretty at times, but spring can't come fast enough. When on days like this, when it's that cold, spring can't come fast enough.
This is true. This is true.
Well, for everyone, I hope you had a good week or are having a good week. You know, depending on when you're listening to this, I hope things have been going good. We like to start the show each week with a tip, trick, or strategy, or something we've experienced during the week. So, Paco, what you got for us today?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to find it right now. So as everyone knows, I've been on this nice big what's the word you want to say? Bandwagon train, if you will, for support the FI, I guess is what Mr. Kirkendoll had mentioned. And as you see, he's not here today. He'll be joining us next week. And with a special announcement coming up when this episode drops, we should have a live scheduled for you all to watch on a favorite thing that we call TechCon Unplugged. So I'm super excited to hear that. I think some people got a couple things that they saw through the grapevine. They got a couple news. I've heard a couple disgruntled sighs about seeing New Jersey. I tell you, don't worry. We're bringing the goods. And I just do that to poke at Rick because everyone just likes to talk about New Jersey.
Talk about Jersey people.
But anyway, so as we're talking about, we're going through our transition from all the Arachnus gear to Unify equipment, retrofitting all of our clients with because again, a lot of our size clients are under the 20 user group. We have quite a few that are above 20, and so we're starting to figure out what's going to be the best setup. So we're now starting to deploy a lot of our Ubiquity equipment as on test sites to see how the throughput will go. We have some that are on the smaller side, which we're not too worried about. And then we have some that are 50 to 60 plus clients and see how we are running through that process. So our big focus was to make sure that we're all on one platform. And so that's what we're trying to work on from there. But, as you transition from another platform, you miss a couple features. And so, you're trying to figure out and try to work through some of those things as well. So, my good friend and our ops manager here at ProdigyTeks, John Dubinsky, has been poking around and toying around with the Unify equipment. And there is a feature, which, Rick, I'm sure you probably heard about it, which is known as teleport. And so teleport allows us to get into the equipment. Obviously, we can start logging into certain things as if we're on the network and things of that nature. But we actually have just he has used this tool before, but we just purchased it for ProdigyTeks, and it's called the Soft Perfect Network Scanner. Apparently, this scanner has a portable version. They have different versions of a Mac OS, Linux, things of that nature. But apparently it's a much more robust network scanner than those like Angry IP Scanner or forgot what the other one is called, Advanced IP Scanner. So apparently this is a much more fuller feature set. It can do a lot of the discovery that you would need, things of that nature. So that is a link we will add into the show notes. But Soft Perfect Network Scanner, along with the teleport feature, has allowed us to not worry or not miss the overseer function for us logging into devices such as the printers, the switches, the phone systems, the cameras, the NVRs, things like that. Because again, they're not all inside of the Unify ecosystem. That is our plan to move forward in that direction. But right now, it's replacing all of the routers. Then start quoting and replacing all these end of life gear as we kind of move forward on, and then start replacing a lot of these access points, because as we had internally discussed, we were stuck in the 80s, and now we're full-fledged ahead on utilizing a lot of the Unify equipment.
Cool. Just getting deeper and deeper into the fire, isn't it?
Man, the ring of fire around me is too deep. It's not even funny.
I have a quick tip for everyone, and this will actually lead into our topic for today. But get some kind of marketing campaign or drip marketing or something that you do. It doesn't have to be, I think it should be a consistent on point, on schedule kind of marketing. But something I would recommend for everyone. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I had a client hopefully a client now. I had a prospect that I spoke to 18 months ago. I went to their office. They had called for basically a quote, basically for me to come out, do a discovery call, all those things we went through. They, at the time, were reluctant to pull the trigger. So life went on. I moved on with business. I had initially, when I had first started doing newsletters and email campaigns, things like that, I had them on the email list. And then as things got busier, I stopped doing the emailing, basically. So the client lost communication, basically. So to make this short story long, I happened to be in a store on Tuesday of this week, and today is Friday. So I happened to be in the store in the store on Tuesday of this week, picking up my lunch. And a woman walks up to me. She goes, "Hey, aren't you the IT guy? You came to my office." She told me where they were from. And I could remember the name. I couldn't remember her face, and I couldn't remember the look, but she told me where they were from, and I could remember the name. She goes, I go, "Yeah." She goes, "My boss has been trying to get in touch with me. He couldn't find your card. And, he was just he couldn't remember the name of your name or your company. And he had been trying to get in touch with you because we had some problems. And he wanted to go back over the stuff you had talked to him about before." And I was like, wow, that's interesting. So I did, as you know, I don't carry a card. I carry my digital card. So I gave it to her. She scanned it. And they reached back out to me yesterday, actually. The boss, the owner of the company, reached back out to me yesterday. So we're going to schedule something. I'm going to go see him next Tuesday. And the whole purpose of what I'm saying is, if you have some type of drip campaign or some kind of communication, you should keep it going, even with people you do not end up closing at the time, because you never know when they come back. Now, again, if I would have continued on sending them something maybe periodically each month or every couple of months or something, I probably would have been fresher in his mind. He could remember my name or the company or something. So my tip today is just try to implement something that can continue to communicate with people you've either lost or, prospects you talk to. And for all you Tech Tribe members out there, I'll just say this: if you don't do it on your own, Tech Tribe releases a monthly newsletter and marketing information, like a marketing pack every month, that if at the least you could use those to send out to people to a mailing list or something, just to keep your name, your company name fresh in mind.
So I'll throw another one's hat in the ring as well. So what we've done Shout out to Tahir over at MSP Camp. We're a leader member, and so through he has, depending on what campaign you're running, you can do digital postcards. And so, or I'm sorry, not digital postcards you can send to print. And so there's a system I think called
Stamps. Yep.
Stamp. And so you can automate it to send it. So actually, when I go visit a client that's in one of these what we call megaplexes or mega buildings that are in downtown Chicago, it sounds more intimidating than what it is. But it could be a 50 unit building, but they call it a megaplex, same as like a 300 plus unit building as well. So what I've done is I'll go through the USPS's direct to mail. I'll print whatever campaign. So like right now it's the Windows end of life. Like we're very on Windows end of life, getting people to replace their equipment. How do you check it? Things of that nature, and getting that set up. So we have a postcard set up, and they have several of them inside of MSP Camp where we ship them out every month as that daily touch. Because exactly like you said, Rick, is when you're not front of mind, you tend to get lost in the shuffle. And so being able to give something, because it's funny how much people just save stupid stuff. And so sometimes they'll save a postcard. Sometimes they'll save like a little video box. I think there's some people that send those for like a digital advertisement, things like that. Right. And so these are good things to have. And then really just, for your own customers, sometimes you have your client trying to figure out how to give you a call, and, they're flustered. If you have a mouse pad or you have something that's going to allow them to give you a call fairly readily, being front of mind always helps with being sticky. And yeah, that's my piece for that. So yeah, Tech Tribe, marketing packs, MSP Camp, digital postcards, and more. So I keep saying digital postcards. Postcards you can download digitally to get printed for mail to print. So
right. You can send them directly. That's a good program they have, because you can send them. You can have the card, just fill it out, put the names on there you want to send them to, and this company will just ship them all out for you, which is awesome. So yeah, that is I didn't think about that, but that is also a good way to do it. So let's sounds like we've already kicked off, but let's talk about it. Today's topic really is overcoming business challenges. We all have something. I think that every day there's some new challenge, but we all have some things that we're trying to to fix, to overcome in our business, to make things a little more, whether it's efficient, profitability, reaching customers, whatever the case may be, whatever your some of the business challenges, hiring people, whatever the challenges you may have, someone in this community, which is why I love the community, but someone in this community has had that experience as well, right? And they've been able to, they can share their experience and give you some hints and tips, or to overcome them. So from us today, we're going to give you a few that we've dealt with and how we've overcome them, or are in the process of overcoming them. Because again, I think the business is fluid, so there's always some changes and some tweaks that need to be made when you're dealing with stuff. But Paco, I'll let you kick that off.
Yeah, and I think that it's important for us to identify the stages of the business that we were at and how we scaled out, right? And for those that are listening, we would be doing a disservice to you to not explain, what stage that we tried to figure out this problem, this issue, this thing that we had, right? And so I'll kind of start in the beginning, I guess, is the best way, because I think a lot of our listeners are either solopreneurs, single person boutique MSPs, and some are either killing it right now and they're thriving, or there's some that are just trying to figure it out. And figuring it out could mean a couple things. It could be, they left their 9 to 5 and they're trying to get this thing off the ground. They could have their 9 to 5 and they're trying to figure out, well, how do I juggle both and get this business going? And then there are those that are making that transition, because a lot of our listeners, are considered themselves as hybrids. And so they could be doing computer repair versus managed services. And so obviously, the term break fix, which is commonly associated with computer repair, to, MRR or monthly recurring revenue or managed services for MSP clients. And how do you make that transition, right? And so, I think a lot of it for me, it all starts with, how do you scale? How do you get out? How do you overcome the business challenges? So, I'll try to create as much broad strokes as possible. But for you as the listener, if anything resonates with you, I do want to make sure you email us or join the Facebook group so we can continue that conversation, so that, this topic is just not a one and done. So that's my big thing, for at least for the beginning, on, overcoming business challenges. But, for us in the beginning, we were a computer repair shop. So when we opened up in 2013, February of 2013 until, I believe it was the end of 2016, all we did was break fix. We did computer repair. I had a virtual office, so it solved that problem of me having to worry about giving my home address. People can drop off stuff. I can pick it up. It worked really well. And I made good money, but I was tired of the back and forth, the having to go from one place to another and things like that, because I didn't have a luxury to have an office or a single place for me to do the repairs and then going from there. So how do I transition to being a managed service provider, right? And funny enough, this was actually a question that came up with a couple MSP or a couple IT business owners that are transitioning this week, and they kind of asked me, what is that process and how did you overcome that business problem, right? And the challenge was, how do I get my clients that I did business work for to pay me on a monthly basis, right? Because I think that's a huge challenge of confidence for us is, they pay you for when something's broken, but how can you get them to keep paying for something? And I actually learned this lesson from Matthew Rodella over at the Tech Marketing Engine. So when he had his computer business, Jiffy PC, he transitioned into being a WordPress developer. When he moved into being a WordPress developer, what he did was, I did maintenance, but I also offered small packages that were add-ons to get them in the psychology of paying me something monthly. And so I was like, that's a really good idea. So what I would do is I would then repair the computer, and then I would say, hey, we have these add-ons as a quote unquote warranty for 30 days. We're going to install our antivirus software. We're going to add our backup program. And for 30 days, if anything comes up, we'll be able to get notified. So at the time, I think I was using RepairTech and I was using a couple other guys, but it basically was my RMM, my AV, and my backup product. So I chart, and I marked up a little bit of margin, and I did the page, and then I went from there. But what it allowed me to do was it allowed me to overcome the business challenge of how do I get the client to pay me monthly? And now I created this better value plan that wasn't the whole thing, but it got them to do a small part, which then eventually, as time grew on, I just started to grow that piece over again. Now, it then transitioned into the piece of managed services where, okay, add-ons are great, but, we want more predictable income. And so what we ended up doing was we went from we were doing prepaid hours. We ended up dividing out the amount of prepaid hours that they had. And then we started dividing it per month. And so we said, hey, you spent $7,000 this year. Let's divide that up into a monthly installment. And then we molded into the virus protection plan. And so now we got the psychology of them paying us something every month. Then that's when we really got them. And then we basically raised the rate. But when I say we got them is more of what's the value you're providing, right? And we always hear the influencers nowadays that say, you got to provide value. You got to provide, educate. You got to show what your value is. But I know that a lot of us don't know what that means. And so this was one of those challenges that I had overcome was, how do I get a client to pay me monthly? And so what we did was we used that monthly psychology of just adding on and making it so that it was value oriented. And by creating value oriented was now the client felt that they earned and they made that choice and they felt like they were winning. And when you let the customer know that they were winning, it just helps unlock a lot of other things. And one the most important things is that it gives you the confidence. Because I think for all of us, if you don't have confidence in what you sell, your client's going to see that through that more and more, and it's going to make it even more harder to try and overcome that challenge. So that was a long-winded piece of like that beginning piece of how we did it, but that's one of the overcoming of a business challenge that I hear a lot, and that's how we did it internally here. I don't know, Rick, if you got anything to add for that one.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And it's that, we had to make the same, I had to make the same transition from break fix to MSP, to the full MSP model. And that was hard. It's like you say, when you mention to a client who's used to just calling you when they need something, as to say, hey, now I am making this transition and I want you to make this transition with me, rather than paying me, every 3 months when you call me, I need you to pay me every month, right? And that's essentially what you say to a client when you move from break fix to to the MSP model, right? So you have to be able to justify what you're charging, and justify, what the benefit is for your customer. And like Paco said, if you don't believe it, they're not going to believe it, right? So that brings me to something. One of the challenges we had, and it comes from a similar model, from a similar role, and that's just pricing itself. Now you come from a break fix perspective. You're moving the client to an MSP perspective now, right? So you were paying me whatever my hourly rate is when I came, each time I came. Now I'm going to say to you, I need you to pay me more than my hourly rate per month. And you were used to just paying that 3 times a year, maybe 4 times a year. And you as and then I'll just say it this way, as an MSP, as making that transition as an MSP, I was caught up in that, because you wanted to make it attractive enough to get the client to buy in, but you also need to make it expensive enough or cost enough that you can survive right after you pay all of these things. And I think I've told this story a couple of times before. When I first started as an MSP, this was prior to the computer business repair, prior to me knowing about the computer business repair podcast, the computer business podcast, excuse me, that had Jeff Hallish and Marvin and was it Chris Brothers?
That one was the computer repair podcast. The computer business podcast was Matt Rodella and yours truly.
Right, and Paco, right. I'm sorry. I'm getting all my my idols mixed up here. But but prior to that, I didn't know, what an MSP was. I didn't even know that there was a community out there that could help support MSPs. I knew it was a couple of guys that I knew that I would run into in New Jersey who were doing break fix as well. And I'm coming from the corporate side. I knew the corporate guys who thought what I was doing was a waste because it's too small for them. But my point is, I didn't know how to price. And with needing to secure the client to make some money, and not wanting to lose them by being too expensive, I in the beginning grossly underpriced. And you're underpricing something with one or two reasons, right? One of two things. One, you're barely making it. And two is when you talk to other people who do the same thing you do, and you learn what you're charging, right? You learn what they're charging, what they're getting, and then you discover the true value of what you're offering. And I think what I missed was, in giving a customer and giving a break fix client an MSP contract, I was in the mindset of, okay, I'm just now securing that you can always call me when there's a problem. That was what I was putting the value on, and not putting the value on all of the residual things that were happening now, because I am on, because what are the things I'm doing in the background really that are happening because you're paying me monthly. And I think we missed that transition. I think a lot of people who come into the industry or who make that turn, they miss that part. And I think that's one of the challenges is knowing your worth first and foremost, and then knowing the value you're bringing to a client, and accepting that. And with that, price, when I finally realized it and I started raising prices, and we've talked about this, about me raising prices and talking to clients, I still was in the mindset in the back of my head, worried about losing a client, right? You don't want to lose them. But the fact of the matter is, sometimes every client is not for you, right? And when you look at the numbers and what you spend and what they cost you, if you're breaking even, you're losing, right? If you're making a little bit of money, you're losing. And that's the mindset, the challenge you have to get over. And I think a lot of us, a lot of times say, okay, I will take the client now because I'm going to make some money. But are you really making some money? Are you making any money? And if you really put a price on your time, you'll realize that just getting by is losing.
Right.
So I'm sorry.
No. I mean, I think you're right. I think there's a couple of things, right? I think there is, when you come into the space, you do two things. One, you're trying to figure it out, right? And if you don't have help, it's hard to not have like a community, a podcast, things like that. I often used to say that with Podnuts, when we first found that podcast, we were doing technology. We learned more in the first 6 months of listening to that podcast than we did for the previous 10 years of us doing tech. And so it's sad because when you're in your silo, you think you know everything and you really don't, right? You have to keep an open mind on understanding that competition is not really competition. There's a weird thing where for our industry specifically, that we support each other. And especially it could be someone down the road, and just trying to figure out, how do we build alliances? How do we build help for everyone from there? But I think the biggest piece is on that confidence part of understanding to making that transition. But I think the other piece, like you said too, is, and this was a client mentioned this to me one time, and she was very impressed by it, is you don't want to pitch to your client, or you don't want your client to shop with your wallet. And so what that means is essentially, don't impose what you feel is too expensive, or maybe out of reach, or you don't have confidence to say like, man, they're going to pay me $1,000 a month. Like, I don't know if that's, because $1,000 a month is big when you're first starting out and trying to figure it out, when you've been doing break fix and things of that nature. But when you shop if you force your client to shop with your wallet, you're leaving money on the table. And so it's unfortunate that you have to overcome that, where you have to understand that you are offering them a service. And if they say no, they're saying no to the service. They're not saying no to you. And I think that's where a lot of people internalize that with the rejection, and avoids a lot of things, whether it's scaling, talking, finding new clients, talking to partners. They don't want to be rejected. And so it's a big thing to overcome. But that was one of the traits that I've learned over the years, is that you just can't shop with your wallet on someone else's effort when you're trying to scale yourself. So something to add to that conversation.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, because I think a lot of times we go and we say, this is what it costs, but he won't pay that, or she won't pay that. They don't want to, and you don't know.
Right.
And the truth, the fact of the matter is, and I'm guilty of this. I've done that 1,000 times. And if you say, and let's use Paco's example. If you conclude that when I take all my cost and what makes sense, and that's to have a a MSP contract with this client is going to cost $1,000, right? This is what the true number is. It's going to cost you. It's worth $1,000. When I figure out my cost, my expenses, everything else, if I do $1,000, I make a healthy profit, and I cover everything, and which is what you should be looking at, right? If you decide in your mind the client's not going to pay that $1,000, and you say, "Oh, maybe I'll charge them $750," right? And now you've cut into all of the things you just calculated are necessary for you to do the job effectively. You go to the client and tell them $750. They say okay, they take it. You don't know now if you've left $250 on the table, right? Because they probably would have taken 1,000 just as easy to take the 750. They'd have taken the price. You don't know how they put a price or a value on the service you're giving them, because you don't know if they've come through what they've gone through in the past to get to where you are. And you don't even know if the previous person that may have come to them is saying, I want $2,000 for it. And now you're giving them offering 1,000, which you think is fair for you. You've calculated, is fair for you. And then you're scared to present that with them. So, this all goes back to that same thing again. And I see you chime in. I just want to just get this. And I keep saying this. I have finally, in the last couple of years, learned to say no, because it doesn't really have a benefit to me. I'm sorry. You can go.
Oh, that was it. Oh, sorry. No, what I was going to just say is that exactly what you're saying is there's a lot of money being left on the table. And there is a great philosophy of understanding where, like, how do you know if you're leaving money on the table, and what's the best way to say it, right? There's a great book by a great friend of mine, Andy Cormier, over at he's a channel chief over at Synchro. The book is called So You Want to Be an MSP.
Yes.
And and I don't know if I have it here somewhere, but it is probably a very different approach of how to ensure that you're not leaving money on the table. And it's a different way of understanding how time works for exchange for services, because it allows you to understand that you don't have to standardize. You can standardize on so many things, but this is the one area where you want to squeeze as much profit as possible versus getting cookie cutter into an amount that you offer every year. So it may sound a little bit weird of how I'm saying it. I implore you, find a book. It's on Amazon. We'll put it in the show notes. It is a very good read, and it's a very short read as well. So I think it was very good. It was very well written. And again, if for anyone who ever talked to Andy, his big thing is that how do you make money doing this thing? And how do you do it ethically? And how do you do it in the best way that is the best opportunity for you that you're comfortable with? And how do you get outside of those comfortable norms? So definitely implore you to take a look at that for if you have a feeling that you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah, I think that leads into something else too. It's like actually it's a very good book, and I do recommend it. I'll second that. But I think it leads to something else as well, right? Not a group of us, and I can't speak for all of us, right? And we'll need to know this at some point, but a lot of us come from a tech background, whatever that may be. We did break fix. We worked at a company where we were help desk support or, server support. We did something from a technical side. So what we're used to doing is solving problems, right? And we don't necessarily, as technical people, put a price on solving a problem. We just put basically, it's some of us, it's egotistical. Some of us, it's just it's how we're built, that we want to solve your tech problem.
Right.
And when you become a MSP business owner, you got to remember you're still solving the tech problems, but you got to remember that other part. And I say this a lot. You got to have that business. You got to remember that you're still running a business. So now there is a value on solving that problem, both for you and for your customer. So you just have to have that mindset has to switch. That yes, I want to solve your problem, but there's a cost to solving your problem. And I say that from a financial perspective, but also from one of the other things we lose a lot of, and that's a time perspective, right? Because we will spend an inordinate amount of time solving a problem, solving a tech issue, because it's how we're built. We just gotta fix it. But that fix comes at a cost, and we have to realize it, because if you're running a business, whether you're by yourself or with you have a full team, it still takes away from something else you could be doing. So there has to be a value on that. So I think, when we talk about overcoming challenges, it's that mindset change of you're in this now doing business. You still want to solve the tech problems. You still want to provide the best service and give all of the things that we talk about as MSPs or as a business that we use in our marketing and all of that. We really want to do those things. but they all come at a cost, and we have to be willing to have to be unafraid to put that cost out there. And like I say no if the client's not willing to, or the potential client is really going to try to undercut what your value is, what you know it's worth.
Yeah. No, and then, again, understanding your cost, understanding your efforts, understanding your burden rate. We've talked about all of this in the past, but it's really what you have to figure out, and how do you overcome a lot of the challenges that you run through. So fast forward to now, in this past year, one of the items that we had as a challenge was we had to understand and figure out how are we going to do our offering as our help desk, as our IT service desk. And so, for those who have listened for many years know that, I had an offshore help desk. I hired several technicians from Latin America and Venezuela and in Colombia and Argentina. And so, they were working for us directly. It was an agency at one point that we hired them directly. And that's how we were providing our services. And so it got to a point where our lead technician got poached. And so he ended up leaving. One of the technicians wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And then we had a technician that we just hired, but he wasn't, his technical acumen wasn't there yet. And so we were approached with a problem. It was either do we move forward and retrain on knowledge and how the ProdigyTeks way is, or do we just enroll in something that has technical knowledge, and then we can just go ahead and implement the ProdigyTeks way? So what I mean by that is, do I continue to keep hiring internally, whether that's going to be offshore or onshore, or do I outsource to a third-party help desk? And so we made the decision after talking to some of my close colleagues and said, hey, you know what? If you want to scale, and you want to scale as fast as possible, outsourcing as a help desk is going to be your best bet. Great, fine. Let's do that. So unfortunately, these 8 months, the challenge I had were several things. One, we went from an internal help desk to an outsourced help desk, which is a whole different set of rules, a whole different set of documentation, implementations, you name it. It's not like, tribal knowledge is not the same as you having with an outsourced help desk. Because again, I don't give a flying, what, an outsourced help desk in general, with any business. I won't even say outsourced help desk, with any business. If you're hiring a business for your services, first intention is to make sure that they are doing right by their business and they are running their business properly. Their service is what helps you. So if you believe that they have your best intentions in mind, sometimes that may not be true. But understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying they don't care. I'm saying that their intention is to run a great business, and their services are to help you, which is a very different mindset for you having someone internally and you have someone that's working for you who's trying to do the best for your business because that's who they're working for. Okay. So that's a big mind shift, and that's a big thing to try and overcome. And so you have to implement different introduce different systems, different tools, different methodologies and ways to figure out that, hey, how I was doing business before cannot be done the same way that I'm doing now. And that's your decision as a business owner to say, do I want to do it that way? But sometimes you just got to go through the hurt to understand what you're willing to take and what you weren't willing to take. So a majority of 2024 was a very hard year for us because we had to readjust what we had been doing for the past 11 years. And then 2, understanding that as things became acclimated, who's the true knowledge and source of everything of the business? It's you. And especially for someone that in our business, outside of me and John, which John, he's our ops manager, he's part-time, everyone's going to come to you. So I basically was running support for the first time in 4 years while we were spinning up and getting our help desk up and running. And when I tell you, and this is why I was infamous for always saying on the mic, coming real close and saying, it was rough. Because it was a learning experience, and some things worked right, some things didn't work well. But we tuned it in a way that it works for us right now. But what I will implore you to say is that, overcoming this business challenge, which is what we're currently going through, is fine tuning and understanding how we can make everything work. Is don't be afraid to understand that you made a bet, you thought it worked, it didn't work. Now go back to the what's the damn phrase? Go back to the writing stuff.
Back to the drawing board.
That's the one. Go back to the drawing board, right? And figuring out where, you tried it out, it didn't work out. Now we got to put in a new system in place. Try something a little bit different till you're comfortable with the support that you're providing, right? And then again, as Rick said, it's a fluid thing, it's an ongoing thing. But overcoming business challenges sometimes open up other business challenges that you have as well. Case in point, why are we replacing all our networking equipment? That's a big change that we're doing. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to prevent unplanned work because of a lot of end of life and things of that nature, and just the needs that we have. It's just going to be an easier experience. It's going to be much simpler. And that's the point of all of this, is that for us specifically, overcoming our level 1 help desk woes have calmed down, but there's always still work to do. And then there's the next level from there on how to establish a much better customer experience, because in the end of the day, if your clients are not happy, you're not going to have paying clients. If you don't have paying clients, you don't have a business. And so that's why you have to ensure that not only is your client experience working well, but your employee experience, for those that have employees or contractors, that their experience are going well, because that's what's screaming what is going on for your business to your end user.
It makes a lot of sense. And then change in business is inevitable, right? There's going to be things that, because the world changes, right? The environment changes, the situations change. So, and I think one of the things that's important when you're talking about overcoming business challenges, when you have to make changes, you have to sit down and really have a conversation. And things that I'll say, if you make changes and things don't go as smoothly as you thought, you got to have a conversation with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Is it if things not working out, or is this change, am I resisting it, or is it just not good for us, right? Because there's two different ways, right? Something could be, have a rough start or a rough patch as you're making the transition, because change is hard for everyone involved, right? You're used to doing something one way, and now there's a little bit of a switch. You build a culture inside your business. This is exactly the way you want things to go. And then you can be hired and they add or take away from that culture, and there's that resistance. You make changes in your business, you have to ask yourself a question. Is this change for the good? How do I fix it if it's rough? Or is this not change for the good? And should we basically go, as quote Paco said, back to the drawing board and try it a different way? And that's hard sometimes, because our first response is, it's not working, let's scrap it, right? Because you have that resistance, or it's not working the way I envisioned it, so something must be wrong. Sometimes maybe things aren't wrong, maybe you're wrong, or your approach to it is wrong, right? And you have to make that discernment of what the true, what is the true process here that's happening, and what is the true meaning of it. If it's not working, you should, as a business owner, you should be quick to make changes that are not working, that affect your industry, that affect your company in a negative. You should be quick to root that out, cut out the, excuse me for saying it this way, but cut out the cancer, if that's what it is. But you also, maybe you have to learn how to accept the medicine and let it do its job, right? And that's where you have to make the decision on which route to go with. And it's tough, because if you own your business and you're used to doing things a certain way, it's hard, my friend. It's hard to change. And you can look yourself in the mirror, because you can lie to everyone else, but you can't lie to yourself when you look yourself in the mirror. You know that you are the problem and not everything else around you. But
I think myself all the time in the mirror. No,
Yeah,
but
it's the truth though. But God, I'm sorry.
no, I just to add to what you're saying is that you you explain something that I think a lot of people don't. I don't think that in making sure that they did catch it is there are two things. One, you got to get out of your own way, and then two is don't let biases force you to resist change, because I'll tell you that was what happened with the Ubiquity gear. You know,
Mhm.
I think it was just
5
one
years
of
later.
those where I think it was a lot longer than that. You know, I think it was just one of those where everyone talked about it. It was great. There was a lot of people that were saying they were doing a lot of manual things. You know, I then started chatting with like John and Jeff, and they were like, "Oh yeah, Arachnus is great." So I started adopting that platform. It was ease of use, and obviously Ubiquity has come a long way, is what I understand. And then two, just a big thing of like, hey, when it was the shortage of equipment, and then everyone was like dying to try and get like they were about to kill somebody to get a Unify equipment or gear or something like that,
Mhm.
which further pushed me away from doing that, right? Because I think one piece that we all want to make sure that, at least for me, to explain to those that are trying to understand and they're formulating their stack and standardizing, is you don't necessarily have to go with the norm. You don't have to put in, Fortinet, Palo Altos, all these standards that people put in place, right? That people are like, hey, it's best in class and things of that nature, which they probably are. But if you find a vendor and a product that's solid and it works for you and it does what it needs for your size clients, there's nothing wrong with going against the grain. Like, again, I'm probably one of the few MSPs that was implementing Arachnus equipment when Arachnus had a specific business unit inside of the MSP space. And we've been with them again for now 8 years, 9 years, probably, maybe what's 2017, 8 years. Yeah. We've
Yep.
been with them for about 8 years. And this is the first time now that we're switching, right? Now, granted, we have switched a lot of our main UTMs or IGRs. So, firewalls or business routers, which I'll die on my hill. All of you that deploy firewalls, you're deploying routers because you're not enabling SSL inspection. I'll die on that hill as far as I want. So when I implement what I implement, don't come for me. But my point is that, I think that being able to see what everyone is doing and understanding what they're doing don't necessarily have to be forced toward that way, but there's always two sides of that coin. You can go to the beat of your drum, but sometimes because of biases could be preventing you from making things a lot easier for yourself as you kind of move forward, especially talking to those that do things differently with the same type of gear systems or standardization that you hoped to put in place.
Yeah, I think that's sound advice. I think again, it goes back to something my mother used to say all the time. There's more than one way to skin a cat, right? And for all you animal lovers, I know it's just a saying. But it's just there's more than one way to do things, right? And you can and you have to accept that sometimes, again, I say this, what works for you works for you. But you have to also understand that your way is not always the right way. Right. And be a little more open to change. And, because again, as we said before, change is inevitable in all of our businesses. And sometimes what happens, and this goes to every business in the industry. Sometimes people are resistant to change and it comes back to bite them in the behind because they find, and this is not necessarily, I'm just saying they find out later that they've been so far behind the times that it's hard to catch up. And this goes in any business and in the industry, because I'm sure everyone has an example of someone they know or someone they've read about who didn't want to change with the times and now find themselves, way behind trying to play catch up.
Right.
So,
Don't be the typewriter salesman.
Exactly. Exactly. Or the guy who still goes door to door selling encyclopedias, right?
Yeah.
But I think with that, I think we beat this up a little bit. We do, again, these are things that, these are, I don't want to give a disclaimer, but this is Paco and I's opinion on things and how we look at things and how we do things. We do, as always, invite you to, share your thoughts with us. Send us an email at info@MSP Unplugged. Get on the Facebook group. Again, I invite you to tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm right, whatever it may be. I like to just have a discussion because maybe there is something or a perspective that you come at it from that I don't see. And that may help me. And I'm sure if it doesn't help me, it'll help somebody out there in the community. And that's what the community is for. So, Paco, before we wrap up, any last words?
No, just what you said. I mean, the episode is literally called Case Study. So it is our experience. It's our stories of scenarios that you may have hit or have encountered. And so it's our way of hitting these topics and explaining a different view, specifically how we would do it on our edge. And, I think that there is a lot more transparency happening in the industry, and I applaud that. But, sometimes a lot of people don't go into the nitty gritty and the ugly side, the true side. And, that's really where people are trying to learn. And some people are sometimes afraid to ask for help. I implore you to not be afraid and feel free to email us, poke us. I mean, we're all active on, I'm active on LinkedIn. I don't know what socials Rick is on.
I got an account.
There you go. So, don't be hesitant to reach out. I know a lot of you have reached out to us. And I've been speaking with a lot of you lately, and I appreciate that. And, hopefully we don't send you off the wrong path, but again, your mileage may vary, and it's just our viewpoint of what we can do. Right. And so, with that, I guess the only thing is that stay tuned to later today as we go ahead and drop on what we're going to talk about, which is going to be one of our favorite things that we're going to talk about. And now it's going to be everybody's favorite thing to talk about because we all have a particular skin in the game. And what do I mean by that? There may be an interesting change and revamp of what we do for TechCon Unplugged. You may even say it's a tour of some sort, but I'll go ahead and we'll surprise you all later on today as you hear this podcast on Tuesday. If not, catch the socials, catch the Eventbrites for some of you true believers, and we'll go from there.
I'm sure within a couple of days' time from the airing of this, word will be out everywhere anyway, and everyone will everyone who follows us should have an idea what the hell we're talking about here. But
keep March 7th on your calendar.
Okay. So with that, we're going to wrap up. I do want to thank you all for listening. You can catch us each week. We release an episode on YouTube at youtube.com/MSP Unplugged. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever a new episode is available. You can also catch us on the go if that's the way you prefer. We're on Apple Music, Spotify, just to name a few. And for all of you listening again, I want to thank you for your time. And we'll see you next time on MSP Unplugged.